Hello and welcome back to my second ever video on YouTube. If you don't know me, my name's Ella and I love books. Today we are breaking down my physical TBR, which is a lot worse than I thought it was. This is 60 books I counted, so let's just get straight into it. There will be no order to this, we're just going for it. I'm going to start with this massive pile here. Starting off with a BookTok classic, One of Us is Lying, and the second book. I think there's a third as well. Actually, I think there's a few. This might be a whole series. I feel like this would be a really quick read, one that would be really good to get through if I'm in a slump, just like A Good Girl's Guide to Murder was. So I might make a reading vlog with these two books, or the entire series if I continue to like it. I've seen mixed reviews, so we'll see if I get around to that. Next up is the Renegades trilogy. I have never read any Marissa Meyer books before, but I've wanted to read Heartless for so long because I've heard that it's heartbreaking. I feel like I should have got around to this back in my YA phase, but I just never got around to it. Next up is Circe. I love Madeline Miller. I love The Song of Achilles. I read that in literally a day, so I need to get around to this one. We have The Raven Boys or The Raven Cycle, which is the entire series. I'm a sucker for a fan family, so this is on my priority TBR. Next up, we have a murder mystery trilogy, which I found in a secondhand shop in Melbourne. This is the Pervin Mystery Murder Mystery series, and it starts with The Widows of Malibu Hill, and it's set in 1920s India. The premise of this really intrigued me, but also, I mean, look at the covers. Are you joking? The Quiet and the Loud is a YA queer romance that's contemporary as well. This was sent to me, so I'll have to get around to that on like a beach day or a summer's day when I feel like a quick read. I was gifted this, but I have heard some not great things about the author, so I think that's more why I've been putting it off. Next is The Lovely Bones. This was also picked up from an op shop, which is why it has a bit of shit on it. I've never actually seen the movie, but I know that it's like weird, and I think I bought this when I was really getting into my reading and just wanted to buy as many different books as I could, but now I think that I've narrowed into my fantasy. I've never felt the need to pick this up, but who knows, maybe when I feel like some scariness, I'll give it a try. I love horror movies, but I don't tend to read a lot of horror books. Now I'm getting into fantasy. I still have not read Iron Widow, which is a crime. I've been meaning to pick it up literally since I bought it like 6 months ago, but still have not got around to it. But I'm so excited for another revenge arc. Ever since the Poppy War, I've been dying for something to just give me that not morally grey, just murderous women. That's what I need. I have the first book in the Imperium trilogy as well. This is another one that I've been meaning to get around to for so long. And I've heard that this has some bisexual rep, so that's one of the reasons that I really want to read it. Next book is Gideon the Ninth, and I'll be reading this soon because I take a fantasy literature class and this is on the list, so I'll get around to that probably in a few weeks. The Lesbian Necromancers in Space. Hello. What more reason is there to read the book? But I have heard that this is super confusing or like hard to wrap your head around, so that'll be interesting. Next stack, we have a space opera that I got for my birthday maybe a year or two ago. I love a good sci-fi every now and then. One of my favorite books is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. I didn't care that it was over 800 pages. I loved it. I thought it was a great story. And because I love reading a book and appreciating how much research went into it and how much and how well the author has expanded the world inside it and like an entire universe inside a book. So I am really, really excited for this. But I know it will be a big commitment, so I'll have to set off like an entire month just to read this. The next two were sent to me by publishers. This one is The Stars Are Dying, and I have not read anything by this author before, but wait, this one, just look at the inside of this cover. Are you kidding? And then this one was a signed one, which was really, really lovely. This author also wrote An Air Comes to Rise, and I think this series is called Nightfall. Yes, a Nightfall novel. Next is an Olivia Blake book called Masters of Death. I didn't like Atlas 6 that much, but I'm willing to give her another go because I also have Alone with You in the Ethos somewhere in these piles. I also was very intrigued by this premise. I'm not really into vampires that much, but this is also like ghosty, and I love books like that. I love when they're a little bit supernatural, so this will be great. Next is book 2 and 3 in the Mistborn trilogy. I am currently reading The Final Empire and absolutely loving it. So mad at myself I didn't read this sooner. I am so in my high fantasy era, so I cannot wait to get to these two. And also just to start the entire Cosmere. I feel like I'm so behind on like reading all of those massive books of his that are over 1,000 pages, so that would be great to get into. I have The Song of the Marked, which is the first book in the Shadows and Crowns, which was sent to me by Penguin. I think the next two were both sent to me by Penguin as well, actually. It looks so cool. Oh, like a mercenary main character. Yes. This is A Fate of Wrath and Flame. This is the first book in the Fate and Flame series. And then we also have The Curse of Sage, which has a lovely cover. I'm obsessed with that. I think this is about a thief, a spy master. Last is a book that I should have read so long ago because V.E. Schwab is one of my favourite authors ever. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I feel like this is her most popular book and I haven't read it. I've read Vicious, I've read A Dark Shade of Magic, I've read Gallant, but never touched this. So I'm so excited to see because I feel like her works are so different from each other. So I'm excited to see if I like this one. Pile number 3. First up is The Great Gatsby. I feel like this is a classic American novel. I'm never really in a classics mood. It's not really my go-to genre just because it's not something that interests me as much, but I feel like every time I do read one, I find myself really loving it. And I picked this up from an op shop, so it has a very cool cover and also this really nice clean interior. I have the Dictionary of Lost Words, which I also picked up from an op shop. I have The Queen's Wife, which is by a New Zealand author and it's a memoir. I got this from the queer free bookshop that popped up in Melbourne. It was at Aesop, I think, that did it, and it was beautiful. I loved it. I met these two amazing girls that actually let me skip the line because I was in a rush and I just jumped in with them, and it was just such an amazing experience. It was so beautiful. I really hope they come back next year. Now, I know we're really skipping around with genres here, but we have The Blood Gift, which is the second book to the Blood Trials, which I loved. 5-star read. It was one of my only 5-star reads of this year. I'm so excited for this. I've heard some interesting things. One thing that does make me put off a book though is when I first open it and like the text is just tiny. I just know it's going to be a bit more of a slog. And obviously that's not an author problem, that's a publisher problem. I have The Binding, which is a standalone historical fantasy, I want to say, but that might be wrong. Here is Alone With You in the Ether. This is a really short one, so I'm surprised I actually haven't read this one yet, but I've heard this is very sad, which is my fave. We have A Winter's Promise, which is the first book in the Mirror Visitor series, which has been translated from French to English. I am so excited for this. The cover is just so pretty and I really want to collect the other books because they have like they're kind of connecting, I think, or they look really beautiful together on the bookshelf. I have 6 Crimson Cranes. This has been on my bookshelf for a while. I've heard some interesting things about the sequel, so I think that's one of the reasons I've been putting it off, but hopefully I'll be able to read this soon. Oh, I was sent this one by Penguin. This is Ink Blood Sister Scribe. This looked really cool. They also came with a little matching bookmark, but like obsessed with any cover with gold on it. I have a few Australian general fiction novels coming up next. So we have Honeybee, All Our Shimmering Skies, which is by the same author that did Boy Swallows Universe, which is one of my favourite books of all time. We also have The World Without Us, easily one of my favourite book covers of my entire bookshelf. Fourth pile. These 2 books were sent to me by Cambridge University. I just started this one and it's so interesting. I never thought that I would be actually so intrigued by a non-fiction book. So this is kind of an essay exploring the addictive technologies and how we can gain control back over our lives because screens rule our lives. A Tattoo on My Brain is about a neurologist's personal battle against Alzheimer's, which is really interesting. So that would be great to get around to when I'm feeling scholarly. Okay, we are back into fantasy for the most part, I think. We have The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I heard Norse-inspired world. I was sold. I have Dance of Thieves. I have left this on my TBR out of maybe pity because the first time that I picked this up, I got 30 pages in and it was like DNF. I just did not vibe with it. I don't know what it was. I could not for the life of me get into it, but because people on TikTok love it so much, I just think, okay, maybe I should give this a go. But I also think that I've read too many of the YA fantasy romance for them to actually offer anything new. But I do want to give it a fair go because I think 30 pages just isn't enough. Okay, this is not fantasy. My year of rest and relaxation. I am also 70 pages into this. Now, this is interesting. I think I need to keep reading this. I need to stick with this because I've seen a lot of people say that they absolutely hated it, that they absolutely loved it, and then the people that love it tell the people that I hate it that, oh, they just don't get it. And obviously the main character is not something that every person is going to instantly connect with, but I think that I will stick with this just because it's different from my usual fantasies. One of my next 3 reads is going to be the 5th season because I also have to study it in my fantasy literature class. I am so excited for this because I think I read the prologue and I was like instantly hooked because the writing was just so different from anything I'd ever read before. Jade City, everyone compares this to Peaky Blinders, which is one of my favorite shows ever, and like Peaky Blinders in a fantasy world. Does it get better? I picked up A Grace of Kings the other day, mostly because I had never ever heard of it on BookTube or BookTok. I'd never heard of the author or the title, and I just was obsessed with the cover. Like the blossoms are so beautiful. And I was really intrigued, so I'm excited to get around to this. We have The City of Brass, which is the first book in the Daevabad trilogy. I have Outlaw Mage, which is a book that was sent to me and it has just a total badass on the front cover, so I couldn't say no. And then another much thicker book was sent to me, The Will of the Many. It has a very cool spine. I'm obsessed with that like copper detail. And then this 5th stack is all Rick Riordan. I've read all the Percy Jacksons and then I've read Heroes of Olympus, but I have not got around to the Kane Chronicles, the Trials of Apollo, the Magnus Chase books, or the 2 kind of extra books in the Percy Jackson series. It's the Greek Gods and the Greek Heroes. So that is my entire physical TBR. I am so excited to get through this, but it is going to take me one hell of a long time. If you guys would like to see any reading vlogs or reviews of any of these books, or you think any of them should be pushed higher on my TBR, please let me know in the comments. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. Have an amazing day, and if you're subscribed, you are so special to me. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.